So here we are for part two of our November 19th Lighting the Candle, A World That Works conversation. And today, as you know, I'm Bill Carell, and my co-host is Ken Caputo. Full disclosure, the two of us have been having conversations like this for many, many years. And we certainly have fun shooting holes in the sky, trying to figure out what makes this country a better place, what makes this world a better place, and how can you and I contribute to that. So again, we're having conversations that they're unintentional and intentional at the same time, but we're talking around the edges and skirting empowerment. We talked about enlightenment and empowerment in the last segment. And we sort of kind of slid into current events, by way of an earthquake, and started really kind of taking a look at how do we have this environment. It's almost eerie that we have roughly half the people of the United States that disagree with the other half of the people of the United States and vice versa. If you were to take the most recent electoral experience, at face value. So the main thing is to kind of back into how is something like that possible? How is something like what occurred in the systems that were in place and what was actually going on for 9/11 to occur? And 9/11 is the poster child for all the things in the United States that we just plain don't stand for. Our country is not built on the premise, unless you're going to overthrow the government, which our original revolutionary forefathers, excuse me one second, and that is a suspected robocall, which means bye-bye. Okay, so our forefathers basically built into this, and they actually said it. If it comes to the point where there's ever a tyrannical government, it is the responsibility incumbent upon the people of the United States to overthrow that government in favor of something that is just and has to do with representation and has to do with fair-mindedness, and not having a tyrannical government that's telling everybody what they need to do and how to do it. So it's not necessarily in the Constitution. However, if you read the Federalist Papers and you read other things that went back and forth, they were very much concerned about creating an environment where change could happen inside the system. And I'm saying that what happened at 9/11, these guys could be called immigrants. They frequently are called immigrants, but you don't come to the United States of America, blow things up and kill people and expect that folks are now suddenly going to change their behaviors. How's that for an empowering place to step off from?
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not even sure where to start.
Wherever you think will be the right place.
Well, I guess, I guess it's just I'm struck by the paradox of information and belief, and what do you take a risk and let in that might push against, belief? So like, for example, at some point, faster horses were replaced with motor vehicles, and for a lot of people, I'm sure that freaked them out, and others embraced it. And, it's been a mixed bag as to what that's done. I mean, obviously it's advanced things and, it's made us a lot more connected. But then there's also, the pollution thing. You can debate back and forth if it's led to, or influenced climate change. But when the automobile was created, I think it was just with the intention of getting us from place to place faster. And then there's all of these ripple effects that occurred. But I guarantee at the time when that new idea was expressed, some people embraced the potential and possibility for it for communal reasons. Others embraced it for self-serving reasons, and then others rejected it for communal or self-serving reasons. This is going to be bad for the world, or this can be bad for me because I sell horses, So, so it just, and I don't know if there's really, you'll ever have a solution or a way, I think that polarization is in large part leadership. If the view of leadership, all I can do is, we talked about this a couple weeks ago in a company. Sorry, I'm like trying to get my thoughts together because this one's complex. But
this is what happens when you start getting to that place where it's not by road anymore.
And it's just, so it's easiest, like a company is more self-contained. You have a lot more control over what you create, like the culture and what it does. So, as the CEO of a company, I can choose to create an environment of every person for themselves, get the win, beat everybody else in sales, you'll get promoted, whatever it is, right? Or I can create more of a team-based, we're going to work together type of environment. And as the leader, the things that I express, the things that I direct everybody's attention to is going to be reflected in the culture. So, so looking at leadership in our country, the question would be, how has that leadership led to polarization, intense polarization? And I'm not talking just political. There's corporations, there are influencers, there are, who are you listening to and what are they saying? That's just some actor or athlete who has an opinion that may or may not be super qualified. But, if you teaching martial arts as a black belt, it was always very scary to me, because all that means is I got good at martial arts. That's all it means. But people would expect me to tell them how to live their life better. Or how to, serve as a child psychologist or whatever. That was not my realm of expertise. If they'd say, my knees hurt, can you take a look at it? I'm like, no, go to a doctor. I'm not, I'm not qualified. I might've hurt my knee and I have a reference base of what my doctor said, but I'm not qualified to do that. But we'll look to certain leaders and just trust based on a relationship that might not be congruent how we approach that. And if they're advocating for an us versus them or a polarization or a combative environment, that's what we're going to get, and the reverse is also true. If it's more, how do we work together? How do we engage in healthy debate? How do we disagree and then figure out how to use that disagreement as leverage to come out with a better solution than any of us thought? How do I take in ideas that are counter to my belief systems and genuinely become curious about how you came to those conclusions and what I could learn from them? You're going to have a different outcome. So I don't know if I said anything that actually helps in there, but that's the best I've got to start.
Well, one of the really cool things about our conversation is it doesn't matter one way or the other.
Yeah.
Not about you and me. It's the folks that are listening, and it's the folks that can't be here right now, who I know are very much committed. And I just want to say their names. We've got Shelley Kohler, Vanessa Lewis. We've also got Lisa Sheehan, and then Tina Kaddish. And all of these ladies are extremely active in terms of making, in action, doing things to make the world a better place. And so I want to just presence their spirits at the moment. And the thing that is really kind of neat, when we're talking to each other, we have a privilege, okay? I'm identifying a privilege that you and I have, where both of us always in every conversation have respect, mm-hmm. We have appreciation, we kind of like each other, for some strange reason. And there's this, it's a background of trust where you and I have the ability to say things to each other in such a way that it can challenge our ideas, but it's not personal, And the other part of it is that since both of us have put some time into looking into traditions, looking into what what were the ancient ways and what was common among the ancient ways, no matter what part of the world, they were in? What were the things that tended to work? What were the things that tended not to work? But the one thing that I think, looking back over the past and what we have seen over and over and over again, every culture gets to a place where it is so unfair to the majority of the people that they will no longer tolerate. And they do overthrow it. We can look at almost any culture on the face of the planet, some 5,000-year-old cultures, some 10,000-year-old cultures. Every last one of them didn't turn out so well for the leadership body at a certain point. Whether you're Egyptian, you're Chinese, you're Indian, you're South American, Incan, Aztec, whatever it is. At some point, the culture would say, we are beyond the point that we can put up with this any longer. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to die anyway, we may as well die trying to take our lives back and having a little bit of freedom. And the reason that I mention that is because our generation has not lived through an experience of that up until potentially now. And I mean right now. I don't mean 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 9 years ago. I mean at the moment that people are so strongly divided in terms of beliefs, which you said before. Mm-hmm. And beliefs are unassailable. A belief is not up for grabs in terms of prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. Beliefs are, it makes you sick to your stomach if somebody says something in a particular way that you may not even know that you feel that strongly about, but you do once they've said it. Mm-hmm. And those kinds of beliefs are being expressed openly. They're being expressed with a high degree of obnoxious interactions between people that I would never have in my lifetime have ever thought that somebody would call somebody a racist for 15 minutes because they chose not to vote a particular way. Mm-hmm. So what it all comes down to is there's evidence for it ain't working. However, how far away from it working are we? What's the access to having it work? What's the access for kind of flipping the script here? So because, we've talked about, hate, and what hate actually is. It's the absence of love. Hate in and of itself is not a force. It's like darkness where there's no light. Hate is the absence of love. And we've talked about this before. Gravity, love, these are metaphysical things, that we know are out there because we can measure them. They have weight, they have mass, they persist through time. They just don't cast a shadow. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about hate and teaching people that hate is a survival tool that's necessary in their lives, and it becomes part of the belief system, mm-hmm. Where do we go? Again, there's a lot there to unpack, I know.
Well, it's, I think what's interesting is it's not really a how, all the tools are in place. Are there enough people willing to go beyond their belief to find the underlying human common core belief? So I'll give you a simple example, gun control. Guns in this country? That is a huge, and it can be highly polarizing. And I bet you at a core level, everyone could probably agree that what we don't want is for innocent people to inadvertently be harmed or killed by a firearm. And if someone wants to, harm innocent people with a firearm, then they need to be removed from, a place where they can do that societally. So, so if you're able to start from there, how do we protect? But immediately what happens is where that goes is, I'm a responsible gun owner, leave my gun alone, or no one can be a responsible gun owner, give me your gun. Right? So they go immediately to, instead of really doing the hard work.
Two ideas.
Yeah. Instead of the hard work of, okay, those things are true, but we've got work to do. How do we keep people from being harmed, innocent people from being harmed or killed by firearms? And, and we're designed, I can't remember where it was, a brain book, one of the many brain books I've read. They were just saying that when we're faced with a complex problem, we simplify it. That's what our brain does. So it's very, very hard to stay focused on a complex problem. It's much easier to just, leave my, give me my guns or take my guns away, that kind of thing, or regulate or don't regulate, all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. So, so I guess it's really just, is there a way, will there be a movement for people to become very, very interested in having very, very difficult conversations to start from a core result we can all agree with and then rebuild from there? So I asked my mentor about how to fix our political polarization, and he said, you just got to make a better system, that allows for people's voice to be heard in a way that they can trust, and for us to have leaders that represent our core values we can agree on, and then we can debate in a healthy way, like policy that's going to influence things in a direction. And, so I don't know. I think that it's just, it's really, really noisy right now. And it's very easy for someone to just put up a video on YouTube that just just jacks your body full of adrenaline, and it just plays up on, and then you get freaked out and you get scared. And then what do you want to do? You're in fight or flight. You want to run away or throw a rock at it. And, you can't have a conversation when you're in that place. And it's much easier to trigger that. I've been trying to do it for years. I try to do insightful posts on Facebook, and they don't get engagement. If I called someone a jerk, or I mocked someone, or I stated a strong opinion, everybody on the planet would engage in it. So you're not really rewarded for trying to, engage in that kind of thinking, unless you're in more of this kind of situation where it's one-on-one with someone who you do have that respect,
yes.
For. So, and the last thing I was going to say was, our respect comes in large part because neither of us have demonstrated, I don't hear you bashing people, criticizing people, mocking them, saying stuff about them, being, we just demonstrate respect to people who aren't present. And even people that we don't necessarily like or agree with, we still respect the fact that we all share this condition called being human. So, so if you don't have that, where's the trust going to come from?
Yeah. There's an underlying sentence that was pretty big for me, probably back in my late 20s. And when I was trying to figure out how to be a leader of men and women, in a manufacturing facility, when most of them were 15 to 18 to 30 years older than me. And, at one point, I literally did have responsibility for a whole lot of different things that were in competition with each other for me to learn at the same time. The job, the communication skills, the trust, knowing where to kind of call it off, when things weren't funny anymore with insults and what have you. However, if you ever want to have a great experience, you go work around people who aren't careful with their language, who especially, and it's not too far from the truth to say that 60% of the folks that worked for me were Archie Bunkers, and with good reason. Growing up, coming from a big city or something of that nature, where there were gangs, or where there was, the background here was, we were all Americans. How we resolved our skirmishes in the neighborhoods was with language, by being, abrasive, and by being able to shout other people down. Well, that turned into rap. Okay, it turned into breakdancing. It turned into other competitions that didn't require guns. Okay, so what I won't recant the story here, but I do remember a couple of different times in my experience where the absolute racism that was being demonstrated in the conversation was one that was coming from survival. That each person, whatever they had to say, got to the edges of where their comments were no longer derogatory. They were respectful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where you get to a situation in a group of people at a culture when there's this level of trust, you know, it's like, I'm going to use the nastiest language that I can to praise you, you know, so that you're not showing weakness in front of all of the other peers. But the guy who's receiving it knows you'd have to care about me an awful lot in order to say those words.
Right.
So when you shut down being able to communicate and that certain words and language are no longer appropriate or no longer are acceptable, and that you get called out by a whole culture of people, you know, who are doing nothing but listening for that. I mean, even Barack Obama said, it isn't enough, you know, to listen for and to call out behaviors. You have to be active and engaged in change. You know, it's not just enough to shame people. It's not just enough to cancel them. That does not make this a better country. But the main thing I wanted to say, and where I started off on this little walk through the woods, was we're all Americans. The new kids that came here, the ones that didn't speak the language yet, they had to be tough. They had to be survivors in the first place. And if you could make it here, the rewards for having made it here were everything. We don't have that now. We have people who are coming to this country who are wanting to tear it down and make it go away. They're coming here not with the idea of taking part in the American dream and growing the country and being part of the melting pot. Absolutely not. They're interested in bringing their religion. They're interested in bringing their culture. They're interested in bringing their language. All of these things that for the first sort of 200 years of the country, this is what we did together. You know, we learned how to speak a common language. We learned how to accept each other's differences. And once we started saying, that we're not appreciating diversity and we're not appreciating some of these other things, that started a little bit at a time to actually go to a place where people couldn't say what they needed to say to each other in order to transcend what wasn't working. That's my hypothesis. So I don't know if there's much more to be said on top of that. However, I can imagine a world where people get out of bed in the morning and they are looking for great conversations from folks, and they go looking for the creation of respect as opposed to the tearing down of whatever the culture is at the moment.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's interesting because there's a willingness to, or not, to think through second and third order consequences. You know, like I always loved Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. You know, and the first agreement was be impeccable with your word. And, you know, and I, especially having been in the military, which has its own way of, you know, speaking and language, and in that environment, there were certain things that were acceptable that certainly were not in other environments. And, you know, over time, I don't remember, someone asked me the question once, and they said, what if your kid was listening in on those conversations, you know, and you didn't even know they were there? What are they now going to model? You know, so it's not that you guys don't have an agreement and trust within yourselves, but if that is in some way breaks containment, you know, what is the result of that? You know, and are you willing to accept the result? And it's funny, in business, there's three main questions. You know, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can you live with the downside? Right. And, you know, so upside of using potentially offensive language to establish trust. And that's just what happens in your close group. So then the downside being someone hears that and now they take that and it influences their behavior in a way that leads to disastrous consequences. Are you willing to live with the downside? You know, so, and it's really just in so much of what I really think a lot of where, you know, I mean, talk about every society collapsing. It's hard to think through all the consequences of your actions. And it's also very difficult to get belief from people when you say, you know what, I didn't think that through. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I want to fix it. You know, I want to do better, because they'll drag up stuff that you did. I mean, people are getting fired for something that they put on Twitter 10 years ago. And there's not even, it's like, nope, that's who you were. That's who you are. That's it, you know? So if we don't have an environment where we can say, you know what, yeah, I used that language, or I said that, or I behaved that way, or I believed that. And now there's new information. So are you willing to give me the space to try to do better? People are just going to keep battling. They're going to keep attacking, you know? So I don't know.
That's the system.
Yeah. And it's just, so it's up to each individual. I do the best I can to personally, to just be impeccable in my word, and also to feed attention and energy to the things that from my perspective at this time are things that I would like to see grow and evolve. And I just choose not to give attention or energy to things that I don't see as adding value to, you know, to the globe. You know, I like to think globally, not just United States, you know, but, you know, so I don't know. It's tricky.
Well, it absolutely is, because, you know, in the scope of things, you and I are a couple of ants.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We're not even big in our own anthill, you know?
But you know, though, I started that blog, you know, because the Facebook posts I've been doing, some people were bugging me to put it into a blog where it's more accessible.
Sure.
If you don't use Facebook. And, you know, and the quote that I used is one I've said here before, which I love. It's, you know, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop, you know, and it's, you're doing yourself a disservice if you think that being a speck means that you can't have global, multi-generational impact. You know, every single one of us is capable of that if we choose to cultivate and evolve and, you know, establish our own value as a person and fill ourselves up to the point where that spills over and adds value to the lives of others. Yeah. And, you know, so you just, I don't know. I can't control what anyone else is thinking or seeing or doing. I'm not in control of the president or Zuckerberg or you or anyone else. All I can do is try to do the best I can, you know, to be a good me. Yeah. And, you know, and now you're back to that empowerment thing, you know, I just feel empowered to raise my voice in what feels like a positive way. And I reserve the right to change my mind if someone brings new information or a new view that shows to me that there are consequences I'm not choosing to accept in what I'm doing or the way I'm seeing the world, you know?
Yeah. So I'm thinking a whole lot of things. Back in the 1990s, so do you remember holograms?
Yeah.
That was it, man. This is what the future is all about. Holograms, holographs, all of whatever. The neat thing about it is it was an image in crystalline form. And the really cool thing about it is that if you took a hologram and you smashed it, every single little tiny piece, whatever size it was the entire image of what was there when they were all together.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that all that much anymore, but it's another metaphor for for not being, you know, a drop in the ocean, but the whole ocean in a drop. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of things being holographic. You and I are the sum total of all of our conversations, all of the things that got left behind, those things that are yet to be examined or to be unconcealed as something that's going on there, an opportunity to learn. And I think what we've got a long way to go to take our culture back from, and I like the word robber barons. The robber barons who are in control now are no longer in the government. They are working at the behest of the big money in terms of media, social media, all the rest of that sort of thing. And it was kind of laughable to me to sit and watch Zuckerberg and Dorsey tolerate the questions from the Senate subcommittee, right? Mm-hmm. With both of them with these smug looks on their face, basically. Yeah, man. You guys are piss ants. You get elected for 6 years? You think that's a long time? Don't even think about it. You can start bringing actions against us. We will keep you tied up in court until your grandchildren have grandchildren. The smugness that was there and basically tolerating the questions. There's no more accountability here, my friend. We have to do this ourselves. We have to really examine whether or not the platforms that we're exchanging information and ideas on, or we're allowing, to the memes to crawl into the back of our head to where we forgot that they are there, but we've taken them on board. They're definitely there. All of that said, how do we, you and I, conspire to make this world a better place and start to see that it's occurring? Good place to stop?
Well, I will answer that, because for me, that is my goal, is to bring Quester's Way, which is a brick and mortar thing. I want to bring it to the planet. And really all that happens in there are three things. It's a place that's designed to encourage meaningful human connection, right? Because when you get to know someone, it's a lot harder not to like them anymore, or at least not to hate them, so understanding, empowered learning, and really just joy in the moment, the simple joy in the moment right in front of you, whether it's, your child sliding down the slide, or eating as a family in the cafe, or learning a new dance move, whatever it is. And, and just that, just bringing communities together and creating a place that by design is to support them, and to support just giving people the ability to connect to each other in meaningful ways, and giving them, recognition of the fact that you're capable of learning and growing, and that can be fun and rewarding, and just look at what's in front of you. It's all you got. Best day ever. That's why we say it. Every day is the only day you have, so you might as well try to make it your best day ever.
Agreed. I will recant to you what I said on Jen Ladd's post earlier in the week. What an absolute privilege that I completely appreciate to have been a kind of a participant in that, and also an honorary member of the culture, And the takeaway for me is the best day ever comes from always just do the best you can for right now.
Yeah.
Just do the best you can, just for this moment, just for right now, just this. Mm-hmm.
That's all you can do.
Well, with that said, any other thoughts before we say our goodbyes?
Nope.
All right, so we've just churned up another half hour of your hard-earned time, and shooting holes in the sky and talking about, if we were king of the world, people would get along. We'd empower them to do that. We would make it so enjoyable and so the right thing to do. Who'd want to spend time doing anything else? So, that's all for this week, and thank you again for tuning in on Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. And this is Bill Corral and
Ken Caputo signing off.
All right, bye for now, y'all.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.